Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Here at Cafe Oleh with Nefesh B'Nefesh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that is reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language and your country of origin, but here in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. You can always be in touch with us by email at hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's HEBREW at nbn.org.il. You can, if you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write to us in the chat with any questions, comments, concerns, and requests as well. If you are watching us via YouTube, you can write in the comments, which we also follow for any questions, comments, or concerns, and especially requests. Our only request, if you're joining us live on Zoom, is to keep the personal chat to a minimum. If you would like to not get the pop-up notifications when people are writing, you'll see there's a little arrow next to the chat icon. If you click on that arrow, you have to press specifically on that arrow, and you remove the option to show chat previews, you won't see them pop up while we're learning together. So in addition, you can remove the previews. We also ask you keep the personal chat not related to this class to a minimum. If you have questions about our specific class we're going over today, Q&A is your friend. Ask any questions you have there about what we're talking about today, which we'll get started in a second. One last reminder, you can always see all of our previous lessons up on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh. The very first result will be a link to our full playlist. We now have 126 videos, I think, near 19,000 views. You can watch all of our previous lessons on demand. The last 50 or 60 or so come with the spreadsheets that we use for most of our classes. Okay, let's get today's class started. So last week, I'm sure if you joined us either live or you watched the recording, I'm sure I scrambled your brains because we did a deep dive into grammar with big words like prepositions and conjunctions. This week, we're going to take it a little easy on you. This week, we're going to do something that's no less important when you're learning a language, which is learning the culture in which the language is used. You can't learn Hebrew or any other language in a vacuum. It's used in a specific context, Israeli society, and that society in turn informs the language. You can't separate one without the other. And so what we're going to do today is going to be an ongoing series. The next class won't be in a week or 2 weeks. It may be in a few months, but it's on recurring jokes and memes. What do I mean by that? There are certain jokes that if you grow up in a certain society or you live in a certain society, you'll get immediately. You'll be exposed to it and you'll hear it, and in weeks and months from that same time, you'll get what people are laughing about because you yourself understand it or have seen it. And we're going to look at some of the sources of major jokes today. There aren't, we're not going to look at a huge amount because, again, it requires a lot of Hebrew. We're just going to look at some sources and some examples of them and how they inform everyday Hebrew. If that's too much, don't worry. This is a class you can sit back and relax. There's going to be a lot of video clips. It's going to be hopefully some fun. And at the end, we're not only going to talk about Wednesday's class, which is about how to tell a joke in Hebrew. We're going to give you some very simple prompts how to start a joke in Hebrew, which is also going to be a preview for next week's class. So with that, let's get started. Let me open up our vocab list for the week. Just a second here. And as always, if you have questions while I'm talking about this specific class, please write them in the Q&A, not in the chat. I will be reviewing the chat after today's class. The Q&A is only for those who are joining us live on Zoom. Please write your questions in there. Okay, share screen. So some of these we've talked about before, some of these we haven't. Let me just move that out of the way. Cool. Okay. There's an important term we've talked about already in Israeli society, and it's an anthropological term, right? Again, you can't talk about or learn a language without understanding the society in which it's used. So first off, when we have an important concept in Hebrew and in Israeli society called Medurat HaShevet. Medurat is a campfire. It's a fire you can have in your fireplace or in a fire pit or out in nature, right? Medurat is a fire, like a bonfire, you can think of it as. And Shevet means tribe, T-R-I-B-E. Put it together, Medurat HaShevet is the tribe's campfire. And the idea is that a tribe at the end of the day, both to stay warm, both to cook food, and in addition to those two things, to tell a story and to share ideas, sit around the same campfire. And the idea is used by, it was first coined by Israeli anthropologists and sociologists to say, what is a given society or a given culture or a given subculture's primary means of communication? In Israel, for many, many years, there was only one TV station. It's called Harutz Harishon, the first station. It also controlled the majority of the radio stations. You could get pirated TV from abroad, right? Even from our neighbors. But there was only one official Israeli channel. It showed all sorts of diverse things, and it in turn informed a lot of Israeli society. We didn't have commercial TV. The first TV station in Israel was public broadcasting. We didn't have commercial TV until the early 90s. So up until then, commercials were very sort of bland. They were almost cue cards or someone reading off a script. And that's going to inform a little bit of running jokes and memes that we're going to get to in a little bit, in actually many ways. But Medurat HaShevet is really important because even with commercial TV and even with multiple sources and multiple communities and ideologies in Israel, it's still important to understand how running jokes and memes can still be understood by a wide swath of Israeli society, because there are certain places that people draw the same media and information from. Okay, so Medurat HaShevet is an important term, not just in an anthropological term, but also in terms of understanding Israeli society. Where can we access information that the vast majority of Israelis are also accessing, and thus not only inform their opinions, but also inform their language and their use of language? Okay. The word meme is relatively new in English in terms of using it every day, and in Hebrew it's the same, mem. Memim are memes, but we're going to focus right now on jokes. In Hebrew, the word for joke is bdicha. Bdicha. As always, the Hebrew is in the middle of our spreadsheet, transliteration on the right, English on the left, and if there's more meaning, like I just talked about the tribe's campfire to further explain it, on the far left. Simply put, a joke is bdicha. Bdicha chozeret is a running or a returning joke. Chozer means returns, right? Lachzor is to return. Bdicha chozeret is a joke which returns, or a joke, in this case, a running or recurring joke. Bdicha ptimit is an inside joke. Pnimi literally means inside. Two verbs with the same root, and we talk about roots in Hebrew a lot because they inform how a word is created and how to understand a word, even if you don't understand it 100%, but you can start picking out its root. If you can understand, if you can find the root and understand its meaning, you're already more than 50% there to understand the word. Litzchok. Litzchok means to laugh. Okay. Tzachakti. Tzachakti me'abdicha. I laughed from the joke. Okay. Tzachakti, past tense, first person singular. I laughed. Me, from, ha, the, bdicha, joke. Okay. The same root, study, chet, kuf, gives us the verb lahatzchik. Lahatzchik is to make someone else laugh. We've talked about verbs a lot. We're going to always talk about verbs because they're really important to understand, not just the root, the shoresh of words, those three letters, in this case, tzadi, chet, kuf, but the form in which a word takes. In verbs, we talk about a binyan, literally a structure or a building. And it's those dots and bars that indicate vowel sounds, as well as the helper letters like a vav and a lamed in this case, that indicate also further meaning to this word. So when you get to a more advanced level in Hebrew, you'll understand the difference between litzchok and latzchik. One is one kind of binyan, and the other is another one. And those binyanim inform the meaning. In this case, latzchik, takes the meaning of laugh and laughter, puts it in a form that's the causative form, meaning to make someone or something do something. In this case, to make someone or something laugh. Okay, latzchik is to make someone laugh. If something is matzchik, it's funny, right? It caused you to laugh. That's literally the meaning of the word funny in Hebrew. Matzchik is it caused you to laugh. Something external made you laugh. Equally, when we're telling jokes, is an important verb. I learned this verb with one of the best dictionaries out there called Multi-Dictionary, called Rav Milon. We've shared it before. And it had in the back all sorts of different expressions. And one used the verb lehitchakem. Take a second, try to figure out the root of this word. If you said it was, if I can open it up, you said it was chet, kaf, mem, you were correct. Okay, the root of the verb leitchakem comes from the word chacham. Chacham means smart, but in this case, lehitchakem means to be a wise guy, to be a smart aleck, or let's be real in how we translate this, to be a smart ass. Okay, that's what this means, lehitchakem, to be a wise guy. And so there's a great expression if you're joking around and you want to make sure instead of saying JK or just joking, stam itchakamti. I was just being a smart aleck. Stam means just, but it's also the equivalent in English how I just said, right? Don't worry, just joking. Hitchakamti, I was being a smart aleck. I was being a smart ass. Okay, that's what that means. Okay, now that we've given some initial background into the basic words, let's get into some examples of recurring jokes and memes. This is not going to be comprehensive, like I said at the outset. We're going to look at some examples, and we're going to continue to look at further examples in the future, in future classes. One of the major sources that I indicated before with that idea of the Medurat HaShevet, where we obtain, where we consume our information, come from Pilsomot. A Pilsomet is an advertisement. Okay. In Israel, like I said, for many years, the only TV station was a public broadcaster, and everything was either on cue cards or it was eventually in the 70s and 80s turned into an actual studio-based commercial, but it was still public broadcasting. They couldn't get into real commercials like we know on network TV today. Early 90s, Channel 2 is launched. It's the first private network commercial TV station in Israel. All of a sudden, there are commercials everywhere. And they still use a lot of the same motifs and aesthetics as Channel 1. One of those is a presentor or presentorit. This is simply the Israeli way to pronounce the word presenter. This is important for two things. One, you had people who that was their job. They did consumer reports for the news, and they also did commercials for this. There are some very famous names in Hebrew in Israel. There used to be one woman in particular. Her name was Gimel Yafit. Gimel was obviously short for her full name. And she was a presentorit, right? The female presenter for a whole host of products. Obviously, she was being paid to be the presenter, but number one, she was known for doing those reports, but equally important, because we're talking about a small society, there's the notion that if I recognize the person, I trust the person. And so to this day, when you watch Israeli TV and you watch commercials, even online, a lot of the people who are the presentorim, the plural, are celebrities. If you don't know them, that's okay, because Israel's a small society. And unless you're watching TV or consuming media all the time, you're not necessarily going to know everyone. But if you, for example, turn on right now the latest ad for Bank Leumi in Israel, right? It's two people that a good chunk of Israeli society will recognize. One is an actor, and the other one is a singer. Okay? If you're born and raised in Israeli society and consume mainstream media, you'll know immediately who these are. And there's that notion that, oh, they're a famous person, I can trust them with this. Obviously, we know they're being paid as the presenter or presentorit of a given commercial, but you'll still see that. You'll see even billboards in Israel. You don't have to read a drop of Hebrew. The face of the person, if there's one face on a billboard, on a pilsomet, it usually is a celebrity, right? And they're doing some sign like holding up their finger or giving a thumbs up or pointing to what the ad is for, right? It's this notion in Hebrew, and I'll add it to this spreadsheet before we send it out to you, called smoch alai. Lismoch means to trust, and it's followed by the preposition al. Remember prepositions from last week? Here they come into real-time use. Smoch alai is the command form, also giving a preview of an upcoming class. Smoch alai means trust me, right? And this notion of, I know this person. I don't know the product, but I recognize this person. I've seen him on TV. I've seen her in the news. I've seen them in a movie. I love them. Oh, they're hawking this product. Maybe it's actually worth looking at. You see that a lot in a small society. If you think of bigger societies in America, yes, there are products that are still hawked by celebrities, but a lot aren't, right? They're supposed to be everyday people because the idea is that you see yourself in them. In Israel, a lot of Israeli products are presented by celebrities. So that's a big part of these running jokes and memes, is who's the presenter. Another big part of them is a karyan. Many of these advertisements have a karyan or karyanit, a narrator. It's the person you don't see, that's off camera, who's talking. And one of the most famous running jokes in Israel is that there's basically 2 or 3 narrators for the entire state of Israel and all the commercials they're in. And one of them has this very deep voice, and you recognize that voice immediately. You hear it all the time. And so there was a joke that I'm about to show you an example of, making fun of this guy because he would be the kalyan, the narrator, for just about any product under the sun. From toiletries to food products to a bank to a movie, right? It's that same avuncular, deep masculine voice. And so there's a very famous skit that I'm going to show you now. One of the primary sources of jokes and satire in Israel is, we've talked about this show before, called Eretz Nehederet. It's a wonderful country. It's now been around for more than 20 years. It is the source of a lot of running jokes, drawing on existing running jokes in Israel. One of them is from, I believe, the first season. And it's making fun of these narrators and presenters that you hear all the time promoting the same thing again and again and again. This one, I'm not going to show you the whole clip because first off, it's in Hebrew and there's no subtitles, but I want you to listen to the guy who shows up with the little beard and with the scarf. You're just going to focus on his voice. Everything else you don't need to pay attention to. Just focus on his voice and what he's saying as much as you can. Oh, sorry, I need to change the share settings so you can hear me. There we go. Okay, you're not going to get all of this. All you're going to get is 2 words. And it's the first things that he says that come out of his mouth.
זה כבר שעתיים איחור, נו. טוב, ביי. נו, מה קורה? הוא הודיע לי מישהו שהוא מאחר? הוא דיבר עם מישהו?
הוא לא מדבר עם אף אחד לפני הקלטה. הוא יגיע כשיהיה מוכן.
היי, אני רוני לי מפיקה.
אוקיי, שנתחיל?
אוהבים נקניקיות? כן! קנו נקניקיות טוב טבע. עכשיו באריזה עם הסוס השחור. כי נקניקייה אחרת זה לא כדאי וזה לא משתלם.
מדהים, מדהים.
כן, זה היה מעולה. אולי רק תיתן להם עוד כמה גרסאות של הקן, שיהיה להם את זה?
אוהבים נקניקיות? כן! 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 אוהבים נקניקיות? כן!
מצוין.
Okay, so you get the point, what he's saying. Ohavim naknikiyot, do you love hot dogs? Okay, but listen to how he says it, his voice, right? It's that classic Israeli narrator voice. So I'm going to skip ahead to the second part of this skit, right? He's left the office.
אמיתי, אשתך בטלפון, היא אומרת שזה דחוף.
He's told that he needs to go home. There's a phone call for him. He needs to run home immediately.
אוי, טוב שבאת. הרופאים אומרים שהוא לא סבל. הוא כבר היה איש מבוגר, אבל אתה יודע כמה זה עצוב לי.
She's saying that someone passed away. Thank goodness he didn't suffer too much. And he's replying, yes, but in the same narrator voice.
שלום, גליה. אתם יודעים מתי תהיה הלוויה?
מחר בבית עלמין ירקון הלוויה.
Older guy is asking, when is the funeral? And he uses the same presenter narrator voice, when it's going to be.
מיד אחר כך חברים מספרים על שמואל. שבעה. לא זזים מבית.
תודה.
אנחנו משתתפים בצערכם.
רוצים להשתתף בצערנו? בואו ללוויה. הביאו איתכם 2 זרי פרחים וקבלו זר נוסף עלינו. המבצע בכפוף לתקנון, ההשתתפות מסורן במשפחת הנפטר.
Right? He sounds like an Israeli commercial. He can't turn himself off because, again, that's all you're hearing when you turn on TV. So they're making fun of this ongoing way to talk, right? It gets even more absurd. We'll watch a little bit more of it.
אוקיי, אמיתי, אני לא יכולה לחיות ככה יותר.
החיים לא תמיד הוגנים.
תקשיב לעצמך, העבודה השתלטה עליך לגמרי.
Right? She's saying work has totally taken over your life. I can't live like this anymore.
זה נגמר. אמיתי, אני רוצה שתעזוב את הבית.
איפה אמא?
היא תכף תצא, תאכלו בינתיים משהו.
אוהבים נקניקיות?
I can't live like this anymore. This is all over. And he says to his, where's mom? She's in the kitchen. Go fix yourself something. And he immediately goes back into Ohavim naknikiyot? Ken. Right? So this joke of not only making fun of the narrators, but that specific line, Ohavim naknikiyot, you'll hear again and again of making fun of Israeli society itself, an internal joke, but also sort of the absurdity of a lot of ads that you see on TV that look and sound exactly the same from each other. I'm going to show you another example in just a second. Okay. This one, I'm going to show you the full clip. In 1977, the elections for Knesset were held. And after nearly 30 years in power, the Labour Party was voted out of Knesset. And the Likud Party, it wasn't necessarily called the Likud Party at that point, was voted in with Menachem Begin as the leader of the party. This line, what we're seeing in these other things are both cliches, but also important parts of Israeli society that you can't learn through just Hebrew lessons. And so one of them is Gvirotai v'rabotai mahapach. Ladies and gentlemen, an upheaval, a shakeup. Mahapach comes from the verb lahafoch, to turn something over, right? It can be both turning a page or anything along those lines. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, an upheaval or shakeup. And it comes from the one TV station, because remember this is 1977, there's only one TV station, and it was the nightly news broadcaster. His name is Haim Yavin, very famous. Everyone knows him. He's called Mr. Television. And this is 1977, so it's still trying to give the exit poll and the news at the same time. And he's giving the news that the elections have come in. Even if you don't understand what he's saying, listen to how he's saying it and you can understand the importance of using the word mahapach, right? The upheaval, the shakeup of things, right? And so I'm going to play the thing in full, and then we're going to see a satire of it in a second. But this is a really important moment in Israeli society that's referred to even to this day. Whenever you want to say in Israeli society something, as I said here on the far left, paradigm shifting has occurred, you're going to say or hear gvirotai v'rabotai, ladies and gentlemen, mahapach. It's a shakeup, an upheaval, a revolution in many ways. Okay, let me open that up. This is the original clip from 1977 showing exactly that. Let me first try to get it. There we go. Share sound. Again, you don't need to understand everything in it.
אנחנו בטלוויזיה.
Right. So again, setting the stage. This is 1977. He's in the main broadcast room. Also, this is live TV in 1977. So the camera might make you a little nauseous because there's basically only one camera and it's in black and white. But listen to how he's speaking. Again, even if you can't understand the words, understand in his voice when he's using the word mahapach, a total shakeup, a revolution of sorts. Okay? We'll come back after this clip.
אנחנו בטלוויזיה נטלנו על עצמנו סיכון מסוים, וכפי שתראו מיד, סיכון לא מבוטל, ובמבצע מיוחד פרטי משלנו ננסה לחזות כבר עכשיו את תוצאות הבחירות 77. התחזית הזאת, תחזית הטלוויזיה, הוכנה לפני כשעה, והיא מבוססת על סקר שהוכן במהלך ההצבעה. רק מאוחר יותר הלילה נדע אם אכן נכונה תחזית הטלוויזיה. אם כן, גבירותיי ורבותיי, הטלוויזיה הישראלית מעריכה כי תוצאות הבחירות לכנסת התשיעית יהיו כדלקמן. אנא התבוננו עמי בלוח הנמצא כאן מצד ימין שלי, לוח עם עמודות. מחל, על פי התחזית של הטלוויזיה, לא יותר ולא פחות מזה, מחל ניצחה בבחירות וקיבלה 44 מנדטים בהשוואה ל-39 מנדטים שהיו לה בכנסת השמינית. המערך, ירידה גדולה ביותר, תבוסה, מ-51 בשנת 73 ל-32 מנדטים בכנסת התשיעית. זו אם כן תחזית הטלוויזיה. שוב, תחזית בלבד ולא מוסמכת, תחזית המנבאת ניצחון ברור למחל על פני המערך. אם כן, כנראה לא פחות מאשר מהפכה חלה בישראל. עלייתו של מחל למקום ראשון, סיום ההגמוניה של תנועת הפועלים מזה שנים רבות. נחל המערך בעצם מפלה ניצחת. היסטורית, אני חושב שלא נסתכן יותר מדי אם נאמר שזאת מפלה בשיעור היסטורי. יום כיפורים, רעידת אדמה אלקטורלית נאמר.
Okay, you get the point. Even if you didn't hear it in his voice, right? Calls it all sorts of different things. I want to show you a satire of that from another great satire show that's relatively recent, called Hayudim Ba'im. The Jews are coming. They've already translated some of their skits into English, but it's basically a satire on Jewish and Israeli history. And so they do that exact same show, that exact same moment, but they underscore what you're hearing in his voice and the use of the word mahapach and why he's not using the word immediately. We're only going to watch a few seconds of it because you'll get the same.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, הפסדנו.
קאט, חיים, זה לא מתאים.
מה קרה?
Right, he says, ladies and gentlemen, we lost. And the director says, cut, you can't say that.
אתה לא יכול להגיד הפסדנו.
אבל הפסדנו.
כן, אבל זה לא חדשות שלנו, זה חדשות...
Yes, we lost, but you can't say that because we're not the news just for us. We're the news for the whole country.
חדשות של כל המדינה. תגיד משהו שידבר לכולם.
כולם, בסדר, צודק, על מה חשבתי. גבירותיי ורבותיי,
רבותיי. רבותיי. אוקיי, יש לי.
אקשן!
רבותיי, הלכה המדינה.
Right? Ladies and gentlemen, the state is lost. Right? You get the point that Birotai v'Rabotai Ma'apach is used when something ground shaking has happened. Right? That's the idea here when you use this phrase. It's used all the time, but you get it, that the satire is playing off this closed-minded notion of how earth-shattering it was and how shaken this specific presenter was at the time, because the hegemony, that he used the word in the initial post, right? The hegemonia is gone, or has changed. Okay, let's look at another example of a recurring joke or a meme or a cliche or a term that's heard all the time. This one I can't show you with Nefesh B'Nefesh, but it's from a classic and cult film in Israeli society called Mitzitzim. Mitzitzim means peepers or peeping toms, and it's named after Chof Mitzitzim. It's a beach here in Tel Aviv in the north of the city. It's off Shderot Nordau, off Nordau Boulevard. And it's surrounding these basically beach bums who live and work off that beach in the 70s. And there's a specific line where this kid that keeps getting bullied by the local heartthrob is being lowered into the water as punishment for ratting on him, basically, being in like a bucket, being dunked in the water and being brought out. And he's screaming to the guy whose name is Gute, the guy who's dunking him. He says, Hafuch, Gute, Hafuch. Hafuch, from that same root we just had, by the way, Mahapach, Hey, Chaf, is the same one we get here, Hafuch. Hafuch, as in Cafe Hafuch, is upside down, right? He's saying, turn back, go back, reverse dunking me in the water. And you'll hear that also as an expression used as a running joke, referencing that cult film, which you should definitely watch. I think you can get it with subtitles, called Mitzitzim. And when you hear someone saying Hafuch, Gute, Hafuch, either on the news or in writing or whatever it may be, it means slow down, chill out. Okay? I can't show you that one here. It's a little too much. I can show you this next one. This one was not only requested by some of you, we got a lot of submissions into what jokes to bring in, which is absolutely awesome. But this is one of my absolute favorites. One of the most enduring and influential comedy groups in Israel is called Hagashash HaChiver. Basically, the blind tracker. And it's three guys who joined together, and it's comedy sketch. It's an entertainment troupe. So they sang, and they also created these skits that, even though they're based in the 60s and 70s, some of them are known to this day. For example, popularizing the term ki'ilu. We talk about ki'ilu a lot, right? That term that in Hebrew literally means as if, but we use it in his everyday society as like, right? It's the same idea. They created all sorts of other memorable and classic terms that also, if you ever want to practice your Hebrew, especially your understanding of Hebrew, type in Hagashash, Hagashsh, into YouTube. A whole bunch of skits will pop up. It's really good for your Hebrew as well as your Israeli cultural literacy. This one is considered, I think, one of the best. It's one of the classics, and it definitely has to do with learning Hebrew. And the phrase that you'll hear referring to it is called Hachupchik shel hakumkum. Hachupchik shel hakumkum literally translates as a chupchik is this thing. If you're looking at the screen right now, it's this apostrophe. It's the apostrophe we use before, especially letters that don't have a natural sound, have their own letter in Hebrew. For example, there is no letter ch that makes the ch sound in Hebrew. Instead, we take the letter tzadi with the ts. We add the chupchik. In proper Hebrew grammar, it's called a geresh, and add it right afterwards, and it creates the sound ch. Okay, a chupchik shel hakumkum. A kumkum, many of you know, is an electric kettle, water kettle, right? And the idea is it's a longer skit about calling in to a calling into a radio show, asking questions. And the entire skit, and because they often would perform not just before live audiences, but also record themselves, and they were hits, both live and in recording. They traveled the world, performing not only in Hebrew, but in a variety of languages. And this specific skit is called Hakeh et hamumche, meaning literally beat the expert. Beat, not just literally beat, lehakot is to hit or to strike, but to beat the expert, like, right? Like confuse the expert, win over the expert, make him the loser in this. And so this has to do with a section with one of the skits where it's a guy calling in to get the Hebrew word for hachupchik shel kumkum. And all he's asking for is, how do you say in Hebrew hachupchik shel kumkum, right? There must be some word for it. We're going to listen to a little bit of it because it's a classic. This term, as you see on the left-hand side, is you use it when someone is being pedantic or you want to call someone out on being pedantic. All of you have had a Hebrew teacher like this. You can call me this as well. You'll understand immediately all this guy is trying to get is the Hebrew word for hachupchik shel kumkum. Instead, this is what he gets. Pull it up.
כן, משה, מה השאלה?
יש לי שאלה מחברים.
שאל בני ונען.
אני לא מנען, אני מאשדוד.
כן, מה השאלה?
איך אומרים בעברית צחה?
צחה. צחה. עברית צחה. עם סגול.
איך קוראים בעברית?
איך מכנים. לא איך קוראים, איך מכנים.
רק רגע, תראה, סחבי, אני רק צלצלתי בשביל...
כדי או למען, אבל לא בשביל.
הלו?
כן.
זה רדיו?
ודאי, ודאי.
לא נותנים לבן אדם לדבר.
לבן האדם. לא לבן אדם שהוא יציר לשוני בולגרי, לבן האדם. בית רפוי אחרי אותיות בחלם.
שום בחלם? הלו?
כן.
זה רדיו?
ודאי, ודאי.
תראה, אני בחלם לא התכוונתי. אני רק רציתי לשאול איך קוראים בעברית לשופשיק של הקומקום.
למה?
לשופשיק של הקומקום, זה שמשפיך את התה.
קודם כל קומקום.
Right, so he's saying, איך קוראים לצ'ופצ'יק של הקומקום שמשפיך את התה? What is the flap of the electric kettle called that spills out the water? That pours out the water?
במיל רע ולא קומקום במיל עיל, כמו טומטום במיל רע ולא טומטום במיל עיל.
מי טומטום? הלו?
כן.
זה רדיו?
ודאי, ודאי.
לשופשיק של הקומקום.
שופצ'יקו של הקומקום נקרא בעברית צחה זרבובי.
זורבמה?
Right, and so what's the answer in proper Hebrew? Zarbuvit. And he goes, Zorbama, right? He can't understand the words.
Zarbuvi, Zayin, Befatah.
And so he starts spelling the word out, right? And he says Zayin befatah. So the letter Zayin also means a part of the male anatomy. And befatah is referring to the vowel that it takes, but it sounds like he's saying batachat in your bottom.
מה זה רדיו?
ריש בשבן נח, בין דגושה אחרי בגד כפל.
הלו?
כן.
לשופשיק של הקומקום!
זרבובית, ובהדיה זרבוביתי, זרבוביתך, זרבוביתו, זרבוביתה, וכן הלאה.
אללה יחרב ביתך.
יחרב ביתך.
Right? And at the end, the guy is so fed up with being corrected by his own grammar that he's asking this question. He says, Yachre betak, which is Arabic for may your house be destroyed. And the expert corrects him in proper Hebrew and says, Yecharev betcha, may your house be destroyed, saying the proper way you would say it in Hebrew. Right? Again, even if I just destroy the joke for you, understand that hachupchik shel kumkum comes up all the time. You've probably, again, Hebrew teachers sound like that, right? They're modeling that level of how you taught Hebrew for many years is how this guy was talking down to the caller and to the radio show, right? He was correcting all his grammar before he could even get to the question, hachupchik shel kumkum. Okay, another example. Let's look at, go back to our sheet. So we had achupshik shel kumkum, another classic expression that comes from Hagashash Chiver, is called Isra bluff. Isra bluff is a play on all the different companies, existing, past, private, public, whatever, that begin with the word Isra, right? Israel. Isra'Cart, one of the biggest credit card companies in Israel. Israel, Israel, Amisra Gas, one of the gas companies. A lot of companies were originally called that. Isra bluff is a satire on what was then a banking crisis in the early 80s. And Isra bluff still to this day is used by commentators, people talking about the news, people talking about general society in general, to talk about something that's a state or company sponsored bluff, meaning they're making you do something either to cover up their own mistake or to further stick you with some extra fees. Isra bluff, taking the word Israel, like I talked about, Israel, Isra'Cart, all the different companies, and bluff. Okay. Finally, one last example, and then we're going to get to start a joke and then answer your questions. This one, again, is a running joke or meme. I actually have a few more examples after this one. This one is called Hakait Shel Avia. Hakait Shel Avia is the name of a film. Many of you have probably seen it before. It's a very sad story. It's the autobiographical film of one of Israel's most famous actresses, Gila Almagor, and it talks about her upbringing and her mother, who had a lot of emotional and mental issues in growing up. And one of the classic scenes in the film is Avia's birthday party, which no one comes to. No friends come, no childhood people in her school come. And so when someone says that this is my Avia, Kait Shel Avia, or please everyone come on time, we don't want this to turn into a Kait Shel Avia, it means please come on time to the following party or to whatever you're invited to. We don't want this to turn into Avia's birthday party where no one showed up. Again, a classic running joke slash meme slash inside joke that Israelis understand. All you have to say is Hakait Shel Avia, and it's understood someone didn't show up, or in fact, no one showed up for an occasion they should have come to. This is unfortunately used a lot in the news when we talk about bullying in schools and people who have been socially excommunicated. So for example, if a kid in school is basically been excommunicated by the others in his class, they'll talk about their birthday party being a Kait Shel Avia and inviting people to come. And there's some really heartwarming stories of the more consumer affair shows in Israel talking about this, and then people flocking. For example, people having a bar bat mitzvah, and no one comes to the party. And it's hours before the actual party, no one has RSVP'd. One of the biggest news outlets will say, no one's showing up to Dani's bar mitzvah. Here's where it's at. His parents are requesting anyone who'd like to come to just show up and give some happiness to the bar mitzvah, and hundreds and thousands of people show up. Again, because they know the feeling and they know this film, Hakait Shel Avia, Avia's Summer. Look it up. It's a really sad film, especially this one clip. You can just type in Avia's Summer. You'll see the clip. It's pretty demonstrable. What I want to show now in the little bit of time we have left, and then how to tell a joke, is another form of humor in Hebrew. We showed a little bit of Eretz Nederet, a little bit of Hayudim Ba'im. There are other forms of what we would call humor. There's one I would call it's wordplay. Hebrew in Israel is full of wordplay, and another example of that is of from Hayudim Ba'im, from the Jews are coming, and it's an ongoing skit about Yosef. Again, this is a satire on Jewish and Israeli history. And so one of the skits is on Yosef. And Yosef, they really play up to be this very flamboyant person who's very self-centered and talks always about his dreams and so forth. And this is the moment his brothers are selling him off to an Egyptian or to a merchant. You don't need to understand the Hebrew, just focus on the word zuz. Okay, zuz, and then I'll explain if you don't get the joke afterwards. Let me first open it up. And then I want to show you one more skit. Okay, after this one. Share screen. Now, there are English subtitles. They're not going to help you understand the wordplay in this.
כמה אתה נותן לנו עליו?
How much will you give to us for him?
חצי זוז.
חצי זוז? זוז.
בסדר, זוז.
לא התכוונתי זוז. התכוונתי זוז.
יאללה, זוז.
אתה זוז.
איך אני זוז? אני התכוונתי זוז במובן של זוז.
אני גם התכוונתי זוז.
סליחה שאני מתערב, זה מתקדם לאנשהו הסיפור הזה?
Right? They're playing off the word zuz. Zuz as in a currency. Those of you who know the song from Pesach, Chad Gadya, that's how much he pays for the goat, right? But zuz in Hebrew also means to move. And zuz is a command form of go away. Right? It goes on for a few more minutes, but you get it. Wordplay is a classic, always form in Hebrew. The last one I'm going to show you is some what we would call dark humor. Israel has no lack of dark humor, just like Jewish humor has no lack of dark humor. One of the recurring ones that has come back, especially during this war, is a song from 10 years ago. If you remember, 10 years ago, we had a war called Suketan, Protective Edge, I think it was called, Protective Cliff or something along those lines. And that was it was a defining war in Israeli history because it was again fought against Hamas. It was threatening major ground offensive back into Gaza after leading it in 2006. It also exposed Israel's weakness with regards to the tunnels that Hamas had dug under the border with Gaza into Israel. It was at a time when people who were living along the Gaza border on the Israeli side, whether in cities like Sderot or kibbutzim like Be'eri and Nir Oz, everywhere we now know from October 7th for sure, we're saying out loud, I'm hearing people digging under our homes, and no one took them seriously until this happened. Hamas had put out a song a year or so before it in Hebrew. And the song was called, in Hebrew, it's called Kof Ta'aseh Biguim. Literally translates as attack, make terrorist attacks. Now, they were basically using Google Translate to create a song as psychological warfare against Israelis that became a huge hit in the Arab and Muslim world. Israelis took it and made it into a satire. So there are some great satire ones. The best one is using clips from the Lion King sequel. I can't show it here because I don't want to get in too much copyright problems. And the song is also banned from YouTube. You have to find it on Facebook and whatever. But it's a scene where Timon, the meerkat, is digging under the ground. And it's a whole family of meerkats digging and tunneling. And it's making fun of Hamas and making lighthearted by using a children's film to play this song. I'm going to show you the 2024 version, which is on Instagram. You can find this song, by the way, it's a Wikipedia entry, and they have all the lyrics, and it's a really silly song. In Hebrew, in the fake Hebrew that they're speaking, it's really silly. But the 2024 version, I think, is really funny. Maybe you'll disagree with me. But again, think black humor, dark humor here, folks. Okay, so if you look at this one, this is from a very popular satire account on Instagram. So that's why it's a small screen. Let me move this out of the way. And what it says in blue, you don't have to understand anything other than the song is Tkof Ta'aseh Biguim, Tal something Bazezuim. Like the whole song is about attack the Zionists, attack the Jews, right? And it says in blue here, איך סטודנטים פרו-פלסטינים באמריקה מדמיינים את עצמם. How pro-Palestinian students in America מדמיינים את עצמם, imagine themselves. Okay, if you don't know anything else, just listen to the warping of this song. But if you know what the clip is, you're even better off. Right? Any Israeli will get that joke immediately because they know that song. Tkof Ta'aseh Biguim. It was the biggest joke during that war, and it made people laugh during a very difficult period. And so what you see here is the mashup, right, with Greece, the final scene in Greece, making fun of the song, overlaying it with Greece of, you know, high schoolers gone amok, singing the song at the same time. It's supposed to be a joke. It's dark humor. But again, it's an inside joke. It's a recurring joke that Israelis will get, that as new immigrants, as people learning Hebrew, we won't necessarily have insight to. So if you came across that on Instagram, let alone the Hebrew at the beginning, you may not get the joke. You may not get the song because you're not used to it. I promise this, the original song, maybe I can show you a few. No, I actually can't because I don't want to get thrown off YouTube with our recording. What I do want to show you now, maybe I'll show it to you those who join on Wednesday. I'll show you the original clip, which is no less funny. Before I take questions, like I said, Wednesday's conversation class, for those of you who want to join, we're going to practice our Hebrew by telling a joke. Okay, you don't need to overthink this. There are certain jokes that that take place in Israel that are acceptable, that in other places aren't. I'm not asking you to tell an off-color joke. I'm not telling you to teach an ethnic slur or anything like that, but here are just some simple ways to start a joke in Hebrew, just like you would in English, but here's the Hebrew for it. Tagid, or takshiv, or takshivi, or verb. All of these are ways to grab people's attention. We used these verbs a few weeks ago, right? When you're trying to grab someone's attention, you can use one of the verbs tagid or tagidi, right? Tell or tell me, or I'm going to tell you. It's the command form using the future tense. Or takshiv or takshivi, depending on your gender. Listen up. Or the verb to listen, to hear, lishmoa, tishma, tishmei, or tishmeu. Or the command form shma, shmi, shmu, listen. And then you can use the starting question, shamatem ala sipur shel, just like you would an old school joke in English. Did you hear the story about blah, blah, blah? Right? So you could start a joke in Hebrew. And again, those of you who are joining us on Wednesday, listen up. Tishma, shamatem et sipur al, or shamatem ala sipur shel, blah, 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 right? Listen, did you hear the story about blah, blah, blah? A classic way to start a joke, right? Simple, easy, get someone's attention to listen. You go from there. But the point is, for Wednesday's class, for those of you who join, we just want you to practice. We want you to practice. You don't need to know one of these inside jokes that we went through today, but it's a great way to familiarize yourself with Hebrew. You don't need to think about it too hard. You can just translate as much as you can from English into Hebrew and have fun with it, right? The idea of this class today was to have a little bit of fun with the language we're learning, to have some context in which we're learning it. There are many more examples I didn't go into of running jokes and memes. I said we'll do it in a future class, and we always want to hear your contributions as well. Next week's class, before I jump into questions and answers here, next week's class is going to be about the command form. We just talked about tishma, tishmei, and shma and shmu and shmi and all those other forms here. You see these here. In Hebrew, these are just some of the ways you can do the command form. The command form is usually simply just a verb with an exclamation point at the end. Listen up, sit down, stand up, eat, whatever you want to say as a command. In Hebrew, we have multiple ways of doing the command, and they're very important because it's also how a lot of signage is written, how a lot of important information is conveyed. So for example, especially in the last 9 months, listening to the directives from Pikuda Oleh, the home front command about what to do and what not to do, is often in the command form. So we're going to do that review next week and look at all the different examples. I'm going to stop here, take some questions, and we're going to wrap up. But again, if you already want to drop off, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining. Let's answer some questions in the Q&A. For the joke to tell on Wednesday, is it okay to tell a David Levy joke? The person who said that, kol hakavod, that you know that context. Yes, it is. I'll explain what that means on Wednesday for those who join, but yes, it is. Please, can you put the relevant prepositions with the verbs, especially as we just looked at the subject? Yes, absolutely. I learned years ago to say ani rak tzocheket. I was just kidding. Ani rak tzocheket is another way to say stam hitchakamti, right? We said stam hitchakamti is I'm just being a smart ass. Ani rak tzocheket literally means I'm just laughing. Both ways are okay. If you really want to emphasize I'm not being serious, is stam hitchakamti. Has Israel developed a verb word for like at this point in time? Facebook uses likes. Do you still have to use love instead? Great question. I love that question because in a few weeks from now, we're going to talk about like, love, and affection. So come back to that. Come back in a few weeks with that question. Absolutely great one. All our past spreadsheets. If you go to YouTube, click on that playlist. In the description of each video, you'll find links to our spreadsheets. Is Oavim Naknikiyot from an actual ad? Yes. There are ads that use Oavim Naknikiyot, both as a parody, but also that's the sound of it. They all sound exactly like that. I'm looking for the rest of these questions. Yes, you can tell Jewish jokes on Wednesday. Absolutely. The point, though, is to practice your Hebrew in the form of a joke. And finally, yes, I will send in the description for this video and in the email that goes out, you will have links to all the clips that we showed, including ones we didn't show here. Okay, with that, Toda Rabba, thank you all for joining. I will see you all very soon, whether Wednesday or next Monday for Cafe Oleh. In the meantime, leitrot. See you all very soon.